I'm happily available.
Okay. All right.
All right.
Yeah, good.
Other questions? No, thank you very much, Eric. We
Thank you.
appreciate it.
Thank you.
We also have, wait, I have it in my hand, Stephanie Skis. Is that a close to the right way to say it? How do you say it? Okay, please join us, Stephanie.
Hello,
Hi.
I'm Stephanie Skis. I'm the director of events at the Novel Neighbor, which hopefully you're all familiar with. We're an independent bookstore in Webster Groves. I've been the director of events for a number of years. Before that, I was a bookseller at the Novel Neighbor, so I've been in this area for quite some time now. I think it just makes a lot of sense. As the director of events, we plan a lot of things in conjunction with local businesses. We are one of the few bookstores that can say, honestly, we came out of the pandemic stronger than we were before, which is huge. We now have a strong national presence that has also started to bring more people into St. Louis. I cannot believe I'm saying this on a recorded thing, but via our TikTok. So there's a lot of things going on with our social media and other things. I know it's wild. So that is definitely what brings me here, of really wanting to, our owner serves on just the old Orchard district, but we'd really like to be in a place where we can collaborate across the board and really talk about the future of where things are going. I looked at some of the meeting minutes, and like half of the events that are discussed are things that we participate in at the bookstore level. And I would love to see some of those things grow or add some ideas to it.
Great. Any questions for Stephanie?
When I saw you, I was like, oh, she's from Book Talk.
Thank you so much for supporting us.
I actually was there today, so.
Oh my gosh, thank you.
All right, thank you very much. The good news is we have 2 openings on the Business Development Commission, so there are no official selections made yet, but I'm optimistic, so. All right, moving on to.
More green space. Yeah.
Yes, right. I'm just trying to find the right page, but thank you, Katie. All right, green space. Liz James is with us. Liz, come on down.
Okay, well, I am a 10-year resident of Webster, and I live on Oak Street, which is on Shady Creek. I help to organize a stream team there. So we work on cleaning up invasives. We've done some tree planting. We have had, I don't know, 8 or 9 work days at this point. We've also worked with Old Community Baptist Church, which is on Shady Creek as well. And I would say that's probably the bulk of my activism in Webster for green spaces. But I've worked on several community gardens, including the one at Old Community, and then some in the city over the years. So I would just like to contribute, and I'm happy to spend my time working on Webster and being a voice for the green spaces, and, you know, being active in whatever it is that we're doing to protect and develop our green spaces in an appropriate way.
Great. Anyone have questions for Liz? All right. Thank you very much. We will, at the end of our meeting, make some appointments to boards and commissions. And just so council knows, we have 2 reappointments to consider at that time as well. All right. So let's stick that piece of paper over there. Does anyone have any changes to the regular agenda? No, we're good to go. All right. We will have some meeting issues and updates. I don't know which side we're supposed to start on this week, but Emily, I'm going to let you kick us off.
I don't think I have any specific updates. We had the strategic planning session that was good last weekend, and I'm trying to think of what's happened in the last couple of weeks, but no specific updates come to mind.
All right. Karen?
I have no updates this week.
All right.
Mayor, the only thing I would say is the Traffic Advisory Commission is moving pretty steadily and pretty quickly on some of the objectives that they would like to see. And I think what they need from us are some direction and some guidelines and some roadmaps to ensure that their work isn't wasted or isn't for naught. So I would just ask that if we can figure out what exactly we want them to be working on from a council goal perspective, I think it would be extremely helpful to help direct what they want to do.
So just in response to that, I think those of you who have been around for a while know that we do have a policy of boards and commissions coming before us to talk about the work they're doing once annually. City manager and I have been talking about how to schedule that. Maybe we should, David, try and get the Traffic Advisory Commission early on that schedule so that and if there's anything that we might, we can all look at minutes or share the minutes from what they've been talking about, but Dr. Peoples, do you think as we schedule those, putting traffic advisory sooner rather than later might help us solve some of these issues?
Absolutely. We can look at November.
All
dates.
right, great. Thank you. Pam?
Yes, Sustainability Commission met yesterday and they reviewed several programs that they've been working on. The first is the official kickoff of the program for recycling red bags. It's become
You can
more
wave your
more
bag.
intentional. Yes, I brought a prop today. And you can leave while these have been recyclable at Schnucks, with sustainability, the WKT is making a more of a concerted effort to get these in the right places when they're finished being used. So there's a box at City Hall, Recplex, Schnucks, and at the WKT offices where they can be dropped off. The pumpkin composting event is slated for its second year. It's coming, well, not this coming Saturday, on Saturday, November 5th at the Recplex, and that will be from 8 a.m. to noon. And it is not only an important event, but it's also fun, I hear, to go and
Yeah.
smash pumpkins.
It really is.
They also reported on the most recent joint committee meeting with Green Space and which I'll go ahead and report on that if that's okay a little bit.
Fine by me.
Okay, so they have a subcommittee and they have been prioritizing efforts that they can collaborate upon. And so the first one that's been coming up is stormwater management. So the subcommittee met with a member or a previous member of the East West Gateway Council of Governments and the head of the Deer Creek Watershed Alliance. And they met most about finding assistance with grants and in order to learn more and ultimately manage our stormwater. MSD does have a grant program, but there are others out there. So the next step is for them to investigate how to develop the stormwater management plan with grant funding, as well as possibly some of the ARP funds that we have delegated to them. They also went over their priorities for Forever Webster Groves, which we'll be hearing about more tonight. And then finally, yesterday, separate from the commission, I did do a walkthrough through the flooded areas with a resident who invited us to meet with him. So I walked through North Forest and East Pacific and learned about his firsthand experiences with the recent flooding. I did learn a lot, but I would say just the overriding idea is that it's very complicated. There's a history of flooding there, as well as the more intense flooding that we've had recently. So I'm looking forward to hearing more about that tonight with our presentation. That's it.
Great. Emerson?
Thank you. I have no reports from commissions or boards, but I do like to read this statement as a request for future agenda for the council. I'm recommending that we recreate or create our economic development plan to help Webster Groves realize our community economic vision and take control of our economic future. The plan can bring residents, private and public sectors of business together. The plan can be used as a roadmap to revitalize our community, develop and rehabilitate housing, promote sustainability, attract investments, and encourage and create affordable housing. Together with the council, the community, and the businesses, we can make these goals and achieve it. And making how we're going to achieve those goals. We're on a good path. We're doing creative, we're going strategic planning. We're looking at vision and mission statements. We're being more structured in our function as a city. We're looking at our general fund and where we're going to be in 5 years. And the development, economic development plan is a key part of that puzzle. So I suggest we look at, start planning to revise or redevelop that plan. I think we do have a plan out there somewhere from what, 1976 or 19, it's old, I'll put it that way, it's way outdated. So,
78, right?
78?
I think it's
That's
78.
78, yeah. So I recommend that we put that on the agenda and get that process started.
So in our conversations, Emerson, it sounded like you would like to schedule some work session time for us to talk about what is it what do we mean by that? Are we talking about Old Webster North? Are we talking about more than that? What are the kinds of things that might go into that?
That's correct.
Okay, so is there a consensus about that being an agenda item that we'd like to see sooner rather than later, or?
Yeah, I thought we had discussed doing that because we talked specifically about the current the current plan and that it hadn't really been updated since 1978 substantially. And that was a key part of our looking at what we needed to do moving forward in terms of when even talking about approaching our revenue development and how that was key for that. So I honestly thought that that was something that was already on our radar that we were.
Okay.
I have questions. You're speaking of the Development Foundation Plan?
I think that's what they called it. yes.
Okay, okay. So yeah, that was from 06. Or thereabouts. It's a little
2006.
newer than that, yeah.
Okay, good.
Well,
But
go ahead,
I'm
sorry.
just curious how that would fold into the strategic plan. Do we want to do them at the parallel or?
So I think that's part of the conversation. And, is there a full plan, or is this thinking about how do we move on from the Old Webster North? Because we're almost at a year and we haven't really done anything in response to that, or is it something broader than that? I think that's what the work session would be about, is to try and figure out what's council's appetite. Is it small chunks? Is it something bigger? What does that mean? David, I think you wanted to say something.
It just seems like we're talking about the same thing over and over again and just using different terminology. Isn't this strategic planning? I guess I'm confused as to what we're adding here.
But the strategic planning will be the goals and objectives of the city once we develop those. But the economic development plan is part of the strategic plan, but it's a more defined document to say where we want to go with the developments in Webster Groves. We got housing on the table. We got maybe the building, trying to attract businesses and things of that nature. So it's more of a detailed plan for the city.
Okay, I'm going to stop us now because this is issues and updates
Yep.
but it sounds like, I think Pam and David in some ways are asking the same question. Is this something different or should it wait till after? How did they fit together? And maybe we ought to just all of us think a little bit about that and try and work on that. I know well, no, I won't. I said we're stopping this discussion, so I'm going to stop talking. Sarah, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna talk about Halloween.
Well,
Just a reminder that on Saturday, the 29th, that Old Orchard and Old Webster will be having their trick or treat among the businesses there, and that's from 3 to 5. And there's a lot of participation among our local businesses. So hopefully, folks will turn out and see all the kids in there, grown-ups too.
excellent.
Mayor, while they were all talking,
You thought of
I
something,
did.
please.
So, and you'll probably mention this too. This Thursday, we have the event at the community center, at the rec center with MSD, Green Space and Sustainability Commission to talk about flooding. So that'll be a great event. That's from 4 to 6 at the rec center. This Saturday is Make a Difference Day. In the morning, we've got the dedication or the grand opening or ribbon cutting, hose decoupling for the firehouse too, which is exciting. And then there are multiple volunteer opportunities on the 22nd for a variety of parks, and there are signups that you can sign up on those online. And then on November 9th, I believe it's at the next Historic Preservation Commission meeting. The focus is on restaurant houses, and so we've invited current restaurant home owners to come there and learn about their homes and some opportunities we have there.
Okay.
That's it.
While my head's this way, thank you. Katie, do you have anything?
No, thank you.
Eric? We'll come back then to the city manager and the city attorney.
I have nothing to report.
Excellent, thank you. Councilwoman already noted it, but it's worth repeating again. So this Saturday, we have the grand opening at Firehouse 2. Really hope community will come. It is from 9 a.m. to 11 a.m. and will be a really nice event. We also have the following Saturday on I think it's the 29th at the Public Safety Day. So it's our first ever combined police and fire public safety day, hoping people will come to that as well. It will be at both Firehouse 1 and 2, and it is from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m.
And I assume the children are allowed to come in costume after they've been trick or treating at the.
No,
That's after. The trick or treating is after.
Oh, well, so they come in costume first and then they go. Okay.
Absolutely come in costume, children and adults.
Excellent. Thank you. I do have a few things myself. The Charter Review Advisory Board had its first meeting, elected Jeannie Kirkton as chair, Nicole Chapu as vice chair, and Kyle Klumpf as secretary. They had a very good first meeting. I wanted to thank all of those members for, they clearly are taking this job very seriously and have really been willing to dedicate a lot of time. You can tell from how they're planning. I also want to thank staff for putting together a lot of materials for them so that they can get off to a running start. So thank you all for that. I think we've mentioned strategic planning, so I'll skip over that. We are also, I am participating with a group in Kansas City called United We in the Appointments Project. And it is a project that tries to help underrepresented people and communities serve on boards and commissions. And so we've reached out for some community partners in this organization to work with this organization with us to help, make a good path for board and commission service. We do have we're happy those of you who are here, but we also have some other openings. So hopefully this will help us fill some of those openings. And then I also wanted to remind people there are lots of events in October, these last couple of weeks, October 28th at 5:30 at the Rec Center is the Arts Commission's Lifetime Achievement in the Arts celebration, which should be a whole lot of fun. And we hope that you will join us there. All right. Now that we've had lots of updates, we're going to go on to our topics, and we are going to start with our Assistant City Manager and Director of Finance, who is going to help us with the fiscal year 2023 quarterly fiscal update. And now you all council members have in front of you materials. I believe there's some on, if some of you are fascinated by this and really want to follow the details, there's some over there. If anyone decides they want to leave in the middle, Eric will not take it personally, right, Eric? Okay.
Most definitely not.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor and members. We will begin. This is also your soft close of fiscal year 2022. I'll explain what that means in just a second and why it takes a few good months to get to the end of 2022, well into 2023. So first of all, for everyone who's watching and at home, feel free to go to webstergrovesmo.gov/budget. You'll find all the documents and presentations that we're giving tonight there for you to follow along with us, and links to all the items that we're talking about. So today we're going to talk about it. I'm going to hold up for members here. You have a document called the soft close budget performance. That is the end of fiscal year 2022, the unaudited figures. So soft close, which means the last of the revenue and expenditures for 2022 were actually received by the city on October 7th, was the last date of revenue. So it takes that long for 2022 revenue, which ended in June, to flow to the state, back to the county, and then to us to be able to close out the 22 numbers and send them on to the auditors. And then also we have a Q1 budget performance update, which is the other document in front of you, which is this fiscal year that we are in, our quarterly budget update. And then we're going to be talking about the deficit reduction recommendations, which are generally encompassed on the 5-year plan document, which you have in front of you as well. We will be talking about the fund balance included in that as well. So when we talk about budget performance, what do we mean? Very simple definition: measuring the actual amounts compared to what you plan and approved in the budget. Is the budget performing to the way you planned? That's the, the definition of our metric and measurement. Also, just real quick, we did notice we had some flicker in the Zoom earlier, and so I'm double checking every so often to make sure our mics are still on because it was causing us to mute, and so we missed a couple words with people. So I'll just be checking if you see me scrolling around. Other definitions we'll use tonight, the structural deficit. What does that mean? The structural deficit is not a true deficit, meaning we're not poor. We don't have money in the bank. We have money in the bank, but the amount of our annual recurring expenses exceeds our annual recurring revenue. That is the definition of a structural deficit for those that wonder what we're talking about. And then, of course, what is recurring revenue and what's one-time revenue? It's a very simple definition. Recurring revenue, things that are reasonably expected to occur repeatedly year after year. Recurring revenue or expenditures. Taxes that we know will come in year over year, property taxes, sales tax, expenses, people costs, certain contracts that we have, those are recurring. One-time revenues or expenditures, things that are not reasonably expected. They're going to be one-time costs. Buying a fire truck, one-time cost in terms of year over year. Then we know that we have to plan again for that other one-time cost in the future, but it is not a recurring expense. So through all that, this brings us to close out fiscal year 2022. And I do want to congratulate the departments and the city manager. We closed fiscal year 2022 very well. You will see that our revenue came in 13% above the budgeted estimate, and expenses were cut by almost 23% under what was budgeted. So that did, you can see an $8.8 million deficit in the all funds budget was turned into a $1.933 million surplus in the all funds budget. So that's across all funds. So good performance in the budget for 22 in that regard. The general fund was improved drastically as well. This is where most of our recurring expenses and revenues are at. Our budget was 2.3 when we passed it in the red, the structural deficit requiring that kind of fund balance use. That was reduced by almost 60% to $957,000 by the end of the year. You can see that revenues came in 4.4% higher, and that includes not just increased tax performance, but also increased work by the staff to sell rec passes, recreation fees, other user charges and things like that, work that we do in planning and development. And our expenditures were just over 3% under the budgeted expenditures for the year in the general fund. So what does that mean to the fund balance? Because I know we talked a lot about this in that budget adoption for FY22, which was in the summer of 2021. There were comments about how much fund balance are we having, and does that cause problems for us? So we have recalculated the fund balances, and instead of giving you the whole big fund statement that's many pages and such, we put in what we expected to use out of each fund balance, the savings, one-time money when we passed this budget. So you can see here the general fund, we expected to use just over $2 million. And now at the end of the year, what we actually used, we used just under $1 million, $958,000. So what does that mean? We gained back $1.1 million in the general fund balance in fiscal year 22. And so as you can see, very happy, that we have gained back a good chunk of many of the areas of the fund balance. We did have Firehouse 2 and the pension fund did take not a hit by any means, just had extra spending that came about pension fund due to pension costs, Firehouse 2 with the cost increase for that construction as we went forward. So fund balance changes there. This is again in thousands. Where does that leave the fund balance as we close it is this slide here. We expected the fund balance at the end of June in the general fund to be $9,045,000 when we adopted the budget in June of 2021. We actually close it at 10.5 million. So we gained 1.462 in the general fund in that improvement, both of extra revenue and also the reduced expenses. So that's a gain to the balance. The park fund went up $700,000. The pension fund, despite that change in the usage, only down 2,000. Street is up 889,000. Capital improvement up 541,000. The grant fund looks like we way overspent it. That is a matter of revenues coming in, but expenditures and revenues not being lined up at the same time. So they're stretched across budget years. The grant fund will always fluctuate like that. It is never simple and easy to keep the grant fund in the black. It changes year over year. Firehouse 2, again, we are facing challenges there as we look at the fund balance. We have some left to start with, but as we close out that project and some of those final costs, we'll have to be paying close attention to that in the coming year. Stormwater, 1.4 million almost in that, 43,000 in the sewer lateral, an improvement there. Old Webster, 28,000 improvement, Old Orchard, 24,000 improvement, Crossroads, 17,000 improvement, debt service had improvement, public safety closed up 58,000. And then of course the ARP fund, those funds that were not appropriated out of the first batch. So fund balance news, very good. We have improved the fund balances greatly through fiscal year 22. I did want to talk about in fiscal year 22, as you look through the line item reports, the items that you'll see that are over budget, and then whatever notes that we have noticed in finance as why. In finance, which is my department, we are 75,000, a little bit over 75,000 over budget. Those numbers almost add right up to the nickel with electricity and gas. Electricity costs were 141% of budget. This is last year, 2022 was the first budget year we consolidated all electric bills in finance. But this again, electricity with rising costs, inflation, and as we go through energy changes is something to keep our eye on. Gas, again, 115% of budget. The insurance is a non-departmental department, meaning there's no staff there, but just used to pay out items. That is the property and casualty insurance was 105% of budget. In fire, this is our biggest department overage. You know this and have heard this story. The variance of the department finished 451,000 over budget. Overtime and the FLS pay, of course, FLS pay is the scheduled overtime that we've talked through, that we've gone into, and then gasoline and oil, 145% of budget. So increases in gas and oil costs there for trucks driving the vehicles and such.
Would you just take a minute and give us a little bit more explanation about the difference between sort of regular overtime and the
Certainly.
FLSA?
Yep. So there is, because of the scheduled shifts of the fire department, there is 6 hours of scheduled overtime for the fire department in every pay period. So a firefighter is paid for 112 hours across a 2-week pay period. 6 of those hours are scheduled overtime. So they're 1.5 times the base pay rate. That is booked against what we call the FLS pay line. They're 2 separate lines. The overtime line that you see above it that was up and over the budget. When you look at the numbers, of course, the FLS pay is a much smaller budget than the overtime budget, but still a big increase. Overtime is the unscheduled overtime. So if someone else is sick and a firefighter has to report in to fill that shift and they're getting overtime, it's booked against that line. So when we say overtime in the fire department, we mean the unscheduled overtime. When we talk about FLSA or Fair Labor Standard Act pay, that is the scheduled overtime that happens every pay period for a firefighter. And then just quickly, sorry, Mary, was that good? Got it?
Yes, thank
Okay.
you.
And then Public Works Service Center was over just barely in the testing services, a very small amount, but wanted to report it since it's our overage. So those are out of the entire budget, all the line items for 2022, those are the line items that are over. There are a couple, I think 2 more that are so immaterial that I didn't want to take your time, but that's a goodly amount, and congratulations to the staff for good work.
So I'm going to say the same thing just before you move on. I mean, I think given where all of us were when we were talking through budget, it is really a credit to our staff, especially those of you in the room, but also our department directors who worked really hard at this. And they get the credit for really, making this look the way it does. So thank you to everyone.
And Eric, you might be addressing this later on in your slides, but will you be discussing where we stand with fire currently?
Yeah. Yep. So now we'll go into Q1. This is this fiscal year, our first quarter where we're at. You can see we have budgeted revenue, all funds of 28 million. We have received 21% of that at 5.9 million. Expenditures, we're in a $30.7 million budget. And we have $7.8 million of the expenditures have gone out. So very comparable to where we should be. I'm not concerned about those numbers overall. Why revenue is going to look small now is because none of the property taxes have come into any fund yet. Obviously, they haven't billed for 2022 property taxes. So any property taxes you see are simply delinquents or late payments that are being made on 2021 taxes.
Eric, are
Yes.
those low late payments and I guess one that challenged their bill, they're coming in pretty good or more than expected?
So we are very lucky here in Webster that we have a very small amount of delinquencies that come in, less than $20,000 a year, usually in delinquencies. So we seem to be on track with any delinquent payments that are coming in. We finished 22, I believe, property taxes were over our actual budget amount. So any delinquents that are in are just extra gravy now on top of that. So
Thank you.
that's a very technical fiscal term, extra gravy. So in the general fund, we have $18.6 million budgeted in revenue. We've received 15%, again, property taxes, and only 1 month of sales tax. So in this whole report, there's only 1 month of sales tax credited to this fiscal year. Expenditures, we have a $19.4 million budget. So again, that 826 number you see there, that is the one-time use of fund reserve. Fund balance has to make that deficit up. We're going to talk about that. So we're at 26.39% of the expenditures to date. Looks like I missed a digit in one of my numbers there, so I don't need to update that for those at home. We obviously don't have hundreds of thousands and missed a number there. So fund balance and what this will mean as we take what we improved in 22 and now look forward using where we're at. We expected when we adopted this budget just a few months back to close the fiscal year at 8.948 in the general fund. So, just under $9 million. We've actually improved that by $796,000, which puts your for the fund balance policy, your general fund balance is now expected to be above the 50% mark. So no plan would be needed. So again, we continue to monitor this as we go through our quarterly updates, but that's a very good outcome just right out of the gate and how much we've improved since June when we adopted the budget. And as you can see, changes in the funds, again, well positioned for the city looking forward for fiscal year 23. So general improvement all around. So the improvement from 1 year flows through the next. I'll run through some of our highlights and things both for 22 and 23. Package these together. These are the charts right from our financial software. So you can see the blue bars are the adopted budget. The red bar is if there's any amendments to the budget. And then the orange bar is the actual. Good.
Explain going back to the fiscal year 23 closing fund balance.
Yes.
So we're short for the Arp Fund.
The ARP funds.
Yeah.
So that means that we have we've taken $45,000 more out of the fund balance. We still expect to have $1.6 million in the fund balance. But as we've added some spending, as people have come in with their issues, that fund balance is being drawn down, which just simply means the remaining amount of ARP money that the federal government gave us.
So we're not spending more than we're receiving.
No,
We're
not
just
at all.
showing
This is the
total
change,
receipts.
the change in how much our fund balance is expected to be at the end of the year.
Okay.
If we spend all the things that you've approved as the council, what would that fund balance be at the end of the year? For ARP, we expected it when we passed the budget to be 1.7 million. Now, because of some changes, we're at 1.68 million. So that was a loss of $45,000 in the fund balance, but it does not mean that we've overspent that fund.
Eric, does that include the second tranche of funding?
That includes the second tranche, yes. So we have received the ARP money that is all counted in that fund.
We have.
Yes. So again, revenue spotlights here. I'm going to go through some great news. Sales tax is just going strong, going gangbusters. FY22, the municipal sales tax, this is the pooled sales tax and the local option was 12% over budget. And again, you can see, that little orange is 1 month of sales tax for 23. So we are very strongly going in sales tax. Now this is going to flow with it. We've already seen a little bit of slowdown. Is there some inflation pressures, but we still have strong consumer demand. So we, again, this is the great conversation. Are we going to have a recession or not? Those are the things we watch in terms of sales tax. The fire sales tax, which we do collect and keep here in the city. This is a point of sales tax. Again, 16.6% over budget last year. And this all has to flow towards fire. But of course, as you can see, so it's about $660,000 we received last year. Well, all of that flows into the fire department budget within the general fund. Business licenses were up. That is very good news for the city because they're based on the gross receipts of businesses. So we get more as the businesses do better, 11.36% over budget. As you can see, at 21, actually, coming out of COVID, we exceeded even 2019 pre-COVID. And so really strong demand there. We want to keep that up in our business development efforts. Municipal court fines did come in over budget by almost 21%. I will point out the trend here, as you can see, just even before COVID, court fines, moving down, coming back. But again, we do not count on these as a particular revenue stream, but it is important to note for you because of the volume of those fines and what they've meant to the budget in the past, what the changes will do as we make plans. Parking fines are up. I want to thank the folks for obeying the parking laws and or paying your $10 ticket either way. So 47.62% over budget in 22. And surprisingly, as we're going to talk about gross receipts, gas gross receipts are up over budget. It's our one shining example in gross receipts out of otherwise a very dismal story. As I go to water gross receipts, and the water bills were 10% under budget. When we go to telephone, 25% under budget for gross receipts from telephone. As we go through, again, continued regulatory issues with telephone and right-of-way issues that come up, and I'll explain a little more of that in a couple slides. Electric was 7.89% under budget for gross receipts for electricity purchases. Cable franchise fees, 18.85% under budget. This is you'll start to see as we talk about advocacy, some issues with right-of-way. Now that we have mostly streaming platforms, I'll use the big one, DirecTV. AT&T is really offering a platform through DirecTV to stream. They challenge whether or not we can charge for right-of-way access for their fiber optic cable, which was what they've been installing in Old Webster, whether or not when it was cable, when they were laying a coax cable to get cable service, we would charge a right-of-way fee, and it was this cable franchise fee to have their cable in the city. So they are challenging that regulatory construct. So all cities in Missouri, are dealing with this issue as we deal with cable franchise fees.
If I might,
Yep.
just for a moment, Eric, also for those of you on council, this is, as I think many of you know, I'm on the Legislative Affairs Committee for the St. Louis version of the Missouri Municipal League. This is going to be a priority. And we may, as a council, decide we want to get more involved in advocacy in Jefferson City because they are working on some legislation that may bring this a little bit back into balance. In the long run, we lose when we're talking about actual cable because that's not the way the world's going.
Bright spot, I'll thank Director Davis in Parks and Recreation, all the recreation fees combined, rather than give you about 13 slides of each individual line, I combined them, but they're 13% over budget. Again, as we talked about with the building expansion fitness programs, we're under budget. So, but in general, booming in other areas as we come back from COVID, already have earned 25% of the budget, 90,000 ahead on the average of last year. Already at this point. So you really want to thank Recreation for their work, Parks and Rec, with those programs. So now we're going to talk about spending and some of the spotlights. Again, electricity, we were 41% over budget in 22. Why are we missing these years? Again, we consolidated in finance. So this is the total spend you can see here and what we've done with our budget amounts. And then also, so this year, we have expended to date 34% of our budget, where it's 12,000 behind this day last year, which is good news. But again, we need to be very careful and attentive to this, especially as sustainability comes and talks. If we're going to engage in an energy audit from a cost savings perspective, this is one to look at, just simple bottom line outside of best measures for the climate. Natural gas, we call it gas in the line. That's why you see the parentheses there. We were 15% over budget last year. To date, we have expended 16% of the budget. We have barely done any heating, and we are 2,000 ahead of last year already in our natural gas budget.
And aren't they going back to request to the Public Service Commission too? I think Spire is.
Yes.
So.
Yeah, a gas increase is likely if the Public Service Commission so approves. Fire overtime, the council member, you asked about this again. So in 22, the overtime budget, the unscheduled overtime, so not the piece built into their salary, the piece outside of the salary was 126% over budget or 226% of budget, however you wish to say it. So that is that large number. That's $580,000 is what was spent in 22. In fiscal year 23, we have expended 39% of the budget, which you increased this year. So 304,000 was the budget. 339%, excuse me, has been used. I estimate that we'll be at 93,000 over if we continue at the same average pace that we have the past 7 pay periods of this year so far. So that would be
Better than last year, at least.
it is better than last year, but again, we are still, if that average continues, that will require moving money from some other place. And as we talk about deficit reduction in the effort to bring down the overall expenditures, someone has to pay that Peter for that Paul.
But we also raised the budgeted amount, right? So the percentage isn't the percentage over from 2022.
That's correct. Yes. So I mean, if you take that the 39% this year to date, I mean, we added in the budget $48,000 plus expecting potentially 93 over. So, that's a large increase over the budget again.
I mean, it seems like a bygone conclusion that we're gonna go over budget. So any ideas of where we would get the extra funds for in order to pay for fire?
It's Q1 is always early to say, but ultimately you have directed extra revenue to go to the fund balance. So the administration can seek to come back and just add money out of the fund balance. Or I would say probably closer into Q2 as we start the budget process, have a better sense of where other line items will be performing at and can scrape money out, to sweep it, as we would say.
And is the reason that our actual expenses are projected to be higher at this point than our adopted budget, is that still because of overtime pay?
Yeah, this is all overtime pay. So this entire line is nothing to do but of overtime. So this is not the scheduled pay. This is if somebody is out, and by mandatory staffing, we have minimum staffing requirements have to fill that seat. So that means somebody who's not working that day usually comes in and takes that shift, which is likely going to be overtime. So whether they be out for sickness or vacation.
Does any of our other departments have overtime pay to this extent?
There are none to this extent. No, sir.
Police department?
Police department does have an overtime budget. It is not by any means this big. The police have generally in the past, you see a lot of the police using comp time, taking overtime as a compensatory time balance rather than as a payout, which has its own challenges because the city carries an unfunded liability of time accrued there. But just quickly, the overtime budget for police this year is 115,000.
So can you explain why overtime is more egregious with the fire department than any other department?
So again, to every other department. So I'll give you an example. The municipal court, the overtime budget is exceeded already. Part of that is we had a staff leaving, so we authorized overtime to help keep the case files working and such, but that budget's $3,000. Okay, so very small. But in the rest of the city, if someone's out, we don't automatically bring somebody in to fill that seat for a day. But in general, and certainly I'll turn to Dr. Peoples if she has anything to add. If we have somebody out off a truck, we're required under the collective bargaining agreement to bring somebody in, whether it be voluntarily or mandatory overtime, to come in and work that shift, which then if they've already worked their full set of shifts in that pay period, they're going to get time and a half overtime pay under this line item for that service.
David, that's that mandatory staffing issue that we've talked about before.
Oh, yeah, no, I understand. I just want the public to understand where we're going here and why why we see such a large overtime request and demand in the fire department versus, for instance, even our police department. In figuring out where we're going to get funds for this.
Councilman Franklin, if I may, Mayor.
Please.
So thank you. And Mr. Peterson did a great job explaining, and in terms of the minimum staffing and having the collective bargaining agreement, and we don't have the flexibility there. But it goes beyond just someone missing a day. These are also that we see the high cost when we have someone out, for instance, on workers' comp, when we have someone out on FMLA. We again don't have a choice other than to backfill those positions. So it is a struggle. And to your question of where will we get the extra money from? that is the $1 million question, so to speak, because this council has charged me with reducing the budget by $1 million. So as I'm also still looking for cost savings, and we've done a great job. I want to echo the mayor and, give the directors and staff a hand clap. I mean, that's not insignificant, the dollars that have been saved so far. However, we know that's going to change as we try to plug in the hole of overtime. So it becomes very difficult. I think by Q2, as we get more of those sales taxes and other things and know really where the overtime is going, we'll have a better idea. But just point blank, it's going to be very difficult to find places that don't have consequences to fill the overage.
Like the thing that you look at just this graph, 2019, 2020, I mean, even 2021 wasn't terrible, but so what changed? I mean, that's the question that I think that the fire department needs to answer. What's changed so significantly that overtime pay is now so much greater than what is allotted? And it makes absolutely no sense. I mean, it's just, it becomes problematic for taxpayers and for this council when you look at these graph numbers and you see historically this has not been a major issue, but suddenly come 2022 and now 2023 it is.
All right, moving on. We do have, I just want to highlight gasoline and oil. So again, fiscal year 22, we were 13% over budget across the entire organization for gas and oil for vehicles. You can see the amounts that are over by departments here or by budget programs. This year, we are at 28% of our budget expended to date. That's 20,000 ahead of where we were last year. Again, increase in oil costs, right? Some of this we can't change, but we're averaging just over $2,600 a week in petroleum costs for our fleet, both in gasoline and oil. So again, this is one that we will be watching closely with mileage. Just highlight the electric vehicles here. They cost a little more on the front end off the one-time money, but the recurring money is going to be saved here in what we're paying to outside petroleum companies for gasoline for those vehicles. Deficit reduction. I'll keep moving because I know sustainability and others want to talk to you tonight. So you have charged the administration through resolution 2022 to do a couple things. Lapse $1 million out of spending in this budget for 23, keep our rate of growth going into next year at 0, meaning bring the budget back without growth, and eliminate, do everything we can to eliminate the structural deficit by the close of fiscal year 25. So that's what we talk about when we're talking about deficit reduction. We have, I think everyone in this room and certainly our community has heard about frozen positions and staff changes here at City Hall that have led towards deficit reduction. We have frozen 16.7 full-time positions. You can see those positions and what department they are in. 6 of those were frozen, numbers 1 through 6, before this budget was adopted. So those savings were already built in the budget. And I would just want to highlight that those 3 police officer positions are the historically unfilled, sort of the rolling vacancies that have existed that we held frozen.
Well, how many years was that?
I'll turn to Dr. Peoples on that.
Thank you, Councilman Smith. I don't have the exact number, but in speaking with Chief Curtis, they've historically been unfilled, which will get to larger topics that council doesn't have time to dive into, but they've been unfilled because quite frankly, it's hard to get people to apply for those positions. I had some conversations with another police chief the other day, and I believe that this current academy that is graduating or just graduated only had 10 people in it. So we're going to continue having these conversations, but it is important to note that they were vacant, had been vacant for some time, and that they were frozen. And most of these were frozen through attrition. And that is so important to note because we've heard a lot of commentary about cutting public safety positions, and we have not reduced the public safety positions. They were not filled.
Thank you.
So I want to just highlight that we have 10.7 positions we've frozen that have not yet been included in the budget, meaning the savings have not been accounted for. This other chart in red just simply highlights the authorized positions by each department, what we call a budget department, and then the amount of FTE frozen in each. If they're shaded in red, that just simply means that their proportion of frozen exceeds their proportion of the budget. In green, it's the exact opposite. So trying to find some equity across budget programs is just one metric of looking at this. I wanted to highlight that for you and for the public. So what does that mean? Those 10.7 positions? This is the deficit reduction plan that we intend to bring to you on the November 1st council meeting. It's a budget amendment to essentially move the budget down $734,000, all funds, importantly to the general fund, which is the plan that you asked us to put together, $683,000 out of salaries, part-time costs, workers' compensation, and FICA. That is 68% of the target that you've asked us to reach to date. I would just point out that obviously what's not listed here is pension. We do intend to have loggers in to present to you on our pension, where we're standing, and then we'll calculate any pension savings from these frozen positions at that time. So we didn't include pension now because we wanted that presentation from the pension to you about our status, which I'll just give you a heads up. We have a very good pension fund and we are well-funded, and I'm not concerned about things, but there are improvements we could make along the way if we choose to. So we bring that to you. And one of the things I want to, as you look at this last piece, if there's a big problem with bringing the deficit reduction to your consent agenda, let us know that, so we don't put it on the agenda next week or 2 weeks from now at the meeting. So that is the plan, to bring that, to reduce the budget for the first step by that amount. So I'm going to pop into 5-year plans. We obviously just a couple of weeks ago saw the 5-year plan. We've updated it consistent with our policy conversation to add one-time revenues and expenditures in a section. We've added the deficit reduction section and also the fund balance impact. So we can see in real time as we make changes, what will that do to the projected fund balance? And so as you look at the file that I've shared with you and we'll put up on the screen, are there other assumptions you want to see, visualizations on things that we haven't presented? So let me come to this side and grab this and bring it on in. And this is the new 5-year plan. And so I wanted to just highlight, I'm going to zoom back out here if I can. Let's go down to 100 and see if that'll work. Some of the changes we've made. So first of all, the green section on top is what you have known. So this takes the last 5 years average growth and applies it moving forward, right? To give us a sense of, if we change nothing, our past practice indicates we will do this, right? Past practice indicating future estimates. And that, of course, when you look at the deficits, it's quite alarming. And we've all talked about that and heard about those numbers. Now, I also want to say that that's recurring numbers, right? So if we do have general fund one-time expenditures, we've added this blue section, which will allow us to put in individually. So let's say we, in the general fund, want to buy a whole bunch of new computers, right? That's a general fund cost. We can put that one time in 1 year and affect the deficit or surplus if we have a surplus for that year, right? So it'll be an ongoing document that we can manipulate year over year. Right now, there's no one-time expenditures listed there because they're all built in the budget, so it's already included and such. So, but that's where it will be. And then this bottom section is deficit reduction for the general fund again. So if we do take 683,000 some out of personnel services, what does that do to our our deficit? So I'll just look here. If you look at the blue number, we're 828. If we do not pass the deficit reduction plan that we're talking about, by passing it, we've eliminated the deficit down to 145,000 in this budget, so I'm going to go back up to this blue line, estimated closing fund balance. You can see, again, we anticipate ending the year at 9.744. Now we would improve that to 10.427 million. So that one change just in, from the piece of deficit reduction. And then also I'll scroll over here. And so all people can see it as we look out into future years. FY28, we anticipated a $3.7 million deficit, past practice, future estimates. If we apply the deficit, if we make these cuts now, look what we've done to that deficit just from this one round of changes we've already made, moved it down to 1.4. And so that is represented in the plan that you have all seen. And I'm sorry, it's zooming away. See if I can get this back out so you can everyone can see it on the screen. This black graph that we've all seen, but essentially, again, our red is expenses, and then where we would be if we did nothing, the dotted line. The green is our revenue and where it will go as we grow again, average in the future. The blue is our past revenue with the other transfers when we would pull other funds in. And then the yellow is this $1 million cut if we make it and hold it. And the orange line is if you approve what we will bring to you on November 1st, where we will be and what will happen after we stop holding the line in 25. So we need to do more yet because obviously the revenue and expenses line hasn't met and they haven't crossed the other way, right? We don't still yet have revenue growing faster than expenses, even though the growth rates have improved. So Madam Mayor, as I pull all that down, because I know you have others that want to go, let me know as we look forward on other assumptions and visualizations, and I will turn it over to questions if you have any.
Questions?
Eric and Marie, I mean, this and not the entire directors and staff, I mean, it's impressive the work that you guys have been able to accomplish just in the few months already in regards to our deficit reduction. And I think this should give at least some solace that we are working towards creating a more balanced budget as we go forward in the coming years.
Thank you for putting all of this together. It's really comprehensive and really helpful, and appreciate the detail tonight.
And very easy to understand and follow too. For such a complicated issue, especially with municipal financing and budgeting.
I'm just going to piggyback off David there to give my thanks for not only the clarity, but the amount of data that you presented to us, because again, we have more in front of us to work with, and our residents have access to everything we have access to. So thank you for making that a priority.
And then just to reiterate that this information is available on our website.
That's great.
Citizens can see.
WebsterGrovesMo.gov/budget. It's all there.
All right, thank you very much.
Thanks, Eric.
Right, we are going to invite the leadership of the Sustainability Commission to come forward for our next topic for this evening. Will you introduce yourselves for the record, please?
Absolutely.
Hi, I'm Jamie Hassmeyer. I'm Chair of the Sustainability Commission. Jeff Towers, I'm Vice Chair. On behalf of the commission, we want to thank you for allowing us the opportunity to share some more detailed first steps of the sustainability plan the commission has created called Forever Webster Groves. Through this process, the commission spent time discussing and outlining actionable areas that we consider to be phase one. We focused on creating a culture of people-centered places where people of all abilities are able to walk and bike safely through our streets. We see an opportunity to set a path for the future through smarter building codes and preparing for the electrification of our future. We want to assist residents who want to take advantage of tax incentives on the horizon by doing our part to make solar more feasible. We want to strengthen community collaborations with our business districts. Forever Webster Groves is a set of guidelines that will help our council and dedicated staff set a path for a sustainable future. In your notes, you'll find the first phase of Forever Webster Groves. That can be categorized into 4 parts: energy and budget, business outreach, policy and code, and citizen outreach. To give you a better idea of the plan's potential, we will share a few efforts from each of those categories tonight. Sure, I'll start with a few of the energy related initiatives.
Could you just pull that up a little bit?
Sorry, is that better?
I'll start with a few of the energy related initiatives. My ears definitely perked up during the budget presentation about the pitch from rising energy prices. And along the same line, one thing we'd love to see the city pursue as part of Forever Webster Groves is a energy audit of city facilities. I know things have been done, I'm sure, over the years to make city buildings more efficient.
But we'd love to see the city look to see if there are other opportunities to reduce energy costs, which would obviously be recurring going forward if you're able to identify those and make those upgrades. The next one is along the same line, which is something other cities in the St. Louis region have done over the years, which is a greenhouse gas emissions benchmarking report to look at both within the city of Webster Groves and both within city facilities and residents, what our greenhouse gas intensity is. And as we identify ways as part of this plan to try to reduce those. And the final piece I'll touch on, energy related, involves EV infrastructure. And I know the city's moving right ahead on the first chargers at City Hall. We had representatives from Ameren visit with the commission, I believe it was September. And we discussed with them about ways to be proactive and look forward to the next wave of public facing chargers and what makes sense in terms of where to locate those. And while Ameren doesn't necessarily provide guidance in terms of what areas of town make the most sense from a practical standpoint, you can do some proactive planning to look at what makes the most sense from an economic perspective. Where is it cheapest to tie into the grid? And then use that to help do your planning moving forward. So that's a ways down the road, but I think that's something we're interested in getting going on.
Collaborating with our esteemed business districts seems like a natural step when we consider sustainability, as they help set the tone of our values in the region. We want to engage our restaurant owners of our dynamic food scene to consider how they might be able to make more sustainable improvements, especially as it pertains to food waste. Food waste is a massive issue when it hits the landfill. As it decomposes, it releases methane, which is a stronger greenhouse gas than carbon dioxide. We've begun discussions with a program called the Green Dining Alliance. That's part of the Earth Day 365 organization, a local nonprofit that works toward equity and environmental sustainability. Collaborating with proven programs like this will help guide us through the process of becoming a green dining district. Maplewood, South Grand, U City are already districts, and we feel that this distinction would attract even more visitors to our restaurant scene.
Another focus is to not only help the city and city facilities become more sustainable, but help residents. Along those lines, something we've discussed quite a bit at the commission is, are there code or policy improvements that we can look into to help residents who say want to put solar on their house or install EV chargers as EV become more ubiquitous. And I think when we were here last time, kicking this whole process off, we talked about the idea of EV ready ordinances so that new construction would be pre-wired for EV chargers, and same for solar. If there's new construction, it's a lot cheaper to do that on the front end than we go in retroactively and for the homeowner for the business owner in some cases to put rewire for solar on the back end. So I think those are things that the cities have done that we could look at, see if they make sense, and might be a strong point to help our residents be more sustainable.
The people of Webster Groves are what makes our community truly dynamic. We believe that informed citizenry makes for strong, sustainable changes. The Sustainability Commission is seeking collaboration wherever appropriate to inform our neighbors of ways they can be a part of the movement to live a more sustainable lifestyle. The commission has worked with the Green Space Advisory Commission in the past on a really fun mosquito speaker evening at Maypop in way back in 2019. And we are looking forward to collaborating with them again on some speaker series in the new year. The first one being about light pollution in the dark sky effort. We are also, as was mentioned earlier by Councilwoman Bliss, talking about stormwater management plan with the Green Space Group and consulting with experts on that. So that's really a very important, I feel like, issue right now, especially in light of those climate charge rates. We're also preparing to collaborate with the Traffic Advisory Commission to consider ways to make our streets safer for walkers and bikers. We believe will have a transformational effect in our community when we make things safer and more comfortable, and we will them out of their cars and invite them to travel are very pedestrian friendly city on foot or on the bikes. We believe that the potential of this plan and the benefits it will bring to our city will bring to our city a sustainable future. Sustainability Commission stands ready to put phase 1 into action and send any specific policy ideas for your consideration. Therefore, we are requesting that council draft a formal statement of support to adopt forever Webster Grove.
All right, so we did this sort of raise our hand. We think it's a good idea when we were presented with Forever Webster Groves. That wasn't really a formal statement. They're now ready as a commission, I believe, to start sending us individual proposals. I'm going to ask Neil, what exactly is the best thing for us to do to consider a stamp of approval for them moving forward with specific policies to move forward?
I think a clear statement that then would be presented to you that would be adopted in the form of a resolution is a clear
Okay.
statement. That makes it transparent to the public. Everyone can see it. Everybody understands how it got there. So I would be happy to work with you on language, if that's the case, that we could put together that would appropriately state what you think ought to be considered, and then you as a council can consider it. And if you accept it, then adopt it and it becomes published.
All right, does anyone have any objection to moving in that direction?
Not at all.
All right, is that acceptable to you all?
Yes, as long as we have help.
Yes. And
That's
and
above my
I
pay
guess
grade.
I don't know. I mean, I think it can be rather general,
Right.
so.
And I do some of my best work at some of the local drinkeries around town.
Funny, we like to have meetings there. Okay, great.
I did want to say you all have done a great job. I know it's been top of mind for months on how would you tease apart the plan and make it actionable. And this is very digestible, actionable plan. It's a great first step. So thank you so much for working hard. And I know every commission member has had a hand and put their heart into this project. So thank you very much.
Thanks for your guidance.
Anybody else? Comments, questions? All right.
Can I just ask really quick about what would an energy audit detail?
Front of the microphone, please. Thank you.
Sure. You're looking at, I think it'd be pretty comprehensive and just try to identify ways for the city to save money, whether it's replacing windows, insulating, I wouldn't dare to guess what those ideas might be, but really it would involve having professionals come out look at city facilities. The idea being that not only would you save energy and money, but we do good for the environment along the same.
I'm going to just change topics really quick. I appreciate that answer. Thank you. There was a couple months ago, on HBO, I forget his name now. It's escaping me, but he did this segment about how we're transitioning to electric vehicles and everything like that, and the impact it has on our grid, and whether our grid is actually compatible for converting to electric vehicles and everything like that. And you saw problems in California. And I'm not, if you don't know this answer, it's perfectly fine, but do you know where Missouri stands on that? If we were to start converting more quickly, and what that would do to our grid?
Yeah, and I think we talked about this a little bit with Ameren, and I don't think there's a cause for concern anytime in the near future. I think the key will be getting vehicles, so 80 to 90% of charging across the country is done in the evening at home overnight. People park in their garage and plug their car in. And that's when energy is cheapest and most abundant. It's, you don't want to perhaps charge your car, those peak summer days where things get really tight, and have everyone plugging in their car at the same time. That's where I think you could run into trouble. But I know Ameren is trying to structure things to encourage people to charge when in the Midwest, there's a lot of that wind energy online at night, which is cheap.
Excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
Right. Thank you very much, both of you.
Thank you.
All right. We will now invite our Director of Parks and Recreation and Budget Magician, Scott Davis, forward, to talk to us about a park.
Good evening, everyone. I've invited some of our friends from Greater Greenway here tonight to help me present this topic. But before they come up, I'd like to give you a little brief synopsis of how we got here this evening. Towards the end of our construction project with the Deer Creek Greenway in 2019, Great Rivers Greenway came to the city to propose a partnership to purchase the former McDonald's property and use that as some connectivity to the next portion of the Greenway. And would we like to be involved in that process to help design and develop that park and potentially add it to our park inventory? I took that to the Parks and Recreation Commission and to city administration, and we all felt that that was a good project to potentially be involved in and to work towards. Of course, then COVID happened and it kind of turned the world upside down, and some of those projects got delayed and some took higher priority, even our own city projects. But GRG is now ready to really start the design phase on that. They've already done a 30% design phase. They're starting ready to do the full design and construction of that project. And they'll speak a little bit more about that in a few moments. I think it's a good project for us between that and the next phase of the Greenway, which will connect to the River de Pere Greenway, which connects to the Gravois Greenway. Our residents will have access to over 50 miles of continuous trails, which is phenomenal. So my recommendation is that we do partner with them and work with them. But I am asking for some council action and direction tonight on whether we should continue that partnership. And if so, should we add park improvement CIP funds towards that project in the coming years? If we add those park improvement funds, that'll help potentially elevate the play value or the aesthetic value of that parcel in addition to the funds that GRG has. So I'd like to now turn it over to Angelica and Caitlin, and Todd's also here, and they've got a little slide deck to show you, and then we'll come back and answer any questions y'all may have.
All right, thank you. Welcome. We're happy to have you.
Thank you very much. Good evening, everybody. So as Todd said, I'm Angelica Gutierrez. I'm a project manager with Great Rivers Greenway. And we have Caitlin Service. She's a civic engagement manager. And Todd Antoine, he is our chief of planning and projects for Great Rivers Greenway. So I'm happy to be here. I don't think if all of you were around in 2018 when the first phase of the Deer Creek Greenway was built, the one that you see in the picture. Can I move the slides here? Okay. So I'm sure you have seen this. This is your Lorraine Davis Park. It was part of the development of that Deer Creek Greenway back in 18 and 19, actually. And this is the bridge there connecting this Lorraine Davis Park to Brentwood and then crossing towards the other portion of the Greenway, which is in the Deer Creek Park in the city of Maplewood. And you share a boundary there by the river on the other side. And this feature amenity you received is very unique in the region, actually, the pump track. So that was another partnership, as Scott mentioned in the past. It was great. It's very well regarded, and people really like it. So these are just the things for those that were not around in 2018, the things that GRG has done for Webster Groves. And it is, part of the region, part of the system of a network of greenways. Some of you may have seen this map. This is the area that Scott was mentioning where you can have future connections when this greenway, this small section of Deer Creek Greenway is built. It'll connect to the 2.2 miles that you already have on your system. It'll go north on to the city of Brentwood, the Brentwood Bound project that is connecting all of their trail system, and south to a future potential extension of the Deer Creek Greenway, south towards the west of the county. And then it comes and connects to the River de Pere Greenway, almost 10 miles, and then connects already to the Gravois Greenway, which is Grant's Trail, and it has another 12.6 miles. So this little piece here that I'm zooming in here, it's a missing link. It's really a 1 mile of trail that is, it'll provide this big connection between these wonderful communities. So on this map, you see the 3 different jurisdictions. We have on the east end, the city of San Luis, in the center, city of Maplewood, and you are on the left-hand side or the west, the city of Webster Groves. So this project that you see on the screen really quickly, the length of the project is approximately 1.2 miles. we applied for federal funds, the CMAQ grant through East West Gateway for the 196 project, which is approximately $6 million in cost. And we did receive 3 million for that grant. So it's that's what's gaining traction now. So we get it, and now we start moving towards the design, as Scott mentioned. So along with that, this small parcel, it's project 196A. That's why you see that number. For many reasons, we split those two, including it's, this 196 is only in Webster Groves. Funding will be just, provided by a general fund from GRG, and the other segment is federally funded. City of St. Louis is contributing a big chunk of that segment of Canterbury. St. Louis County is providing funding to us as well for that intersection of Big Bend and Oxford for the traffic signal improvements. So then now we're here to talk about 196A, which is, Scott already mentioned, we acquired this parcel, former McDonald's, in November of 2019. It's 1.02 acres. It is adjacent to the Deer Creek. There are a lot of opportunities for habitat restoration, plantings, work with the sustainability committee to do all of the improvements. The connection to or through the parcel here, which is, you have jurisdiction on that parcel. It's from this point, the existing point of the Deer Creek Greenway, the one that will eventually connect to, again, Webster Groves. That's a little swiggle there on municipalities. So it'll go through the parcel, and then it'll connect to Oxford, and then the Greenway continues eastbound on Oxford. It is now owned by GRG, so we have a little bit more liberties to do what we want to do with your partnership, hopefully. So I'll invite Caitlin to talk about a little bit the benefits, and I think you already know, but this is something that we want to reinforce and let people know what's bringing this project to you.
Yeah, thank you. As Angelica mentioned, the parcel was previously a McDonald's. The McDonald's building suffered from a lot of flooding and ultimately had to close, sat vacant for a while before the building was demolished, and that's when GRG purchased the parcel. So kind of seeing the benefit and potential to the community, part of the scope of the project is to work on sustainability, reducing flooding impacts potentially. The building is, or the parcel is in the floodplain. So removing some of that impervious surface that covers a lot right now with the surface parking, introducing some more native and natural vegetation, give the rainwater somewhere to soak into rather than running off or getting into the city's infrastructure. So reducing the flooding impacts there, connecting the residents to the regional greenway network, which Angelica showed is many, many miles. Potential connection there, and it's kind of a unique opportunity to beautify a gateway that's into Webster Groves. So that's just a little bit about the community impact. I'll turn it back to Angelica.
Yeah. So I just extracted a little bit of the legal document that we signed when we purchased the land, and it has the permitted use well written and specified, and I just wanted to put it out there for you to see. It's for the construction, operations, and maintenance of a public hiking, biking, pedestrian trail, and all improvements related. But it does have a restriction for we cannot build any maintenance or storage buildings, sheds, or similar structures, which is great, because if we want to turn this into an open space, we will not be building any of those.
Right.
And I don't think you would want us to do that. So just wanted to point that out in case you had questions about the legality of this, the permitted use in this parcel here. Okay, so really quickly, we have formed a team. Scott was part of the selection committee of multiple jurisdictions, as you saw on the other project screen. We have hired M3 Engineering in partnership with Oates and Associates and DTLS Landscape Architects. This is our team of professionals that will be doing the design. Right now, they have picked up intermediate design and will take us to final design. Approximately for this segment, for the Webster Groves segment, we want to do planning the rest of 2022, and then design in 2023, and potentially construction in 2024. And I'm going ahead of my slide, give just 1 second. So before we talk about the funding, let's talk about the scope. So what it is that we want to do here is just pretty much create that 12-foot wide trail connection from the existing point to the intersection where the other project 196 will pick up and go east. Of course, we want to do all those landscape improvements that we have mentioned. That includes removal of invasive plantings, adding natives, add amenities, depending on what we hear from you and from the community. And some additional considerations in our communications with you, with Scott, is that we want to have a low maintenance design for, talking about funding and how much we want to invest in maintenance. Of course, we need to be conscientious about how much money we're spending in maintenance. And perhaps create partnerships with the owners of the Deer Creek Shopping Center. They own the creek side behind that parcel, so they have been very collaborative, and they have cooperated with us on that little easement that it was necessary between the parcel and the existing greenway. So it's a potential for a future partnership with them as well. So now this is my slide for the timeline and the investment. So for this parcel, for 196A, planning is scheduled for the remainder of 2022. The design is approximately $200,000, and it'll take us to 23 and 24, and construction to begin in 2025. And we have a $600,000 budget for this small segment of the greenway. So with your input and with working together in partnership, the civic engagement is a big part of the fit of that design, what we want to do with this parcel. So I'll let Caitlin talk about that.
Sure. Thanks. Yeah, all of our projects at Great Rivers Greenway are driven by the community. As Angelica mentioned, this greenway planning process has been ongoing for several years. So our pursuit of converting the parcel into a park space and green space is the result of that public engagement. It was back in 2018. Residents were shown 3 feasible options for the parcel, and this was the most popular option. So we're working to move that vision forward with this project, and we'll continue throughout the rest of design and going into construction to make sure that we're including and hearing from residents at any point where their input could influence the design. So I think that concludes the presentation. We're happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Does anyone have questions?
I was just curious about the public input that you said led to this is the choice. Was that St. Louis County-wide? Was that specific municipalities? Like what?
The previous one that was
Yeah.
on, it was for this project. So it was City of St. Louis, City of Maplewood, and Webster Groves, included in those public meetings that we had in 2018, I think, Scott, something around that. We had a report that it's on our website that you can look it up, and we even have comments from everybody that were in there that have open-ended questions or comments. All of that is in there.
Great, thank you.
Yeah.
So I appreciate you guys being here, and thanks for the presentation. What the ownership of the park and the maintenance of the park going forward after it's constructed and everything, whose responsibility will that be?
You wanna?
I think you know by who's coming to the microphone.
So we haven't, that hasn't been fully designed yet, but we can envision that probably being like the Marshall Avenue Trailhead that we built in the last phase, where we'll collaborate to build it. GOG will build it out and then dedicate it over to the city with a use and maintenance obligation for the next, or in perpetuity, or the next 20 years, or whatever we end up writing that scope to be. So likely it will be ours to maintain if we want to choose to partner in this project.
Excellent. Thank you.
Other questions?
Mayor, I have one. So thank you so much for being here and presenting. It's really exciting. And I'd be interested at another time hearing more about the 2018 community input. So thank you. So aside from the potential maintenance, did I miss the city match requirements? Is there a financial request or cost to the city?
Well, I'll tell you what we have discussed before. Not a requirement. We asked for it in the past. Marshall Avenue Trailhead coordination, there was a contribution by the city. So it was a big agreement where we purchased the land, we designed it, we developed it. Webster Groves paid an amount, and then the property ownership went to the city. And now it's owned by the city, and I believe you have an agreement with somebody else to maintain it. So everybody kind of pitched in a little bit. And then at the end, we turned the ownership from GRG to the city to turn it into parkland. And that's how I think we are envisioning this one as well, where we can purchase it, have a contribution from the city, and then we can turn it over to you for ownership and maintenance.
Thank you. So contributions being used very lightly. Are there any suggestions on contribution,
Yeah.
Mr. Davis?
Previous question first. With the Marshall Avenue Trailhead, some of the funds that we donated turned out that we got some additional items such as the pump track that would not have been able to be included in that project had the city not also joined in financially with that. So we don't currently in second question, Dr. Peoples, we currently in the CIP plan have $150,000 of park improvement fund scheduled in there for fiscal year 23. That's just been a placeholder. We put $250,000 in several years ago when we first started working towards this project. We used some of those funds a couple of years ago and reallocated those to speed up the process on Ivory Crockett improvements. And then the remaining funds that we didn't use there, we didn't allocate or spend out that year. So I've re-added them back into the CIP plan. But again, that's just a placeholder because we haven't done the design yet. Obviously, the more funds that we would add in, potentially the greater the design and aesthetics and appeal and what we could get into that project would be. But GRG can build this project without our funding, I believe. I don't want to speak for them, but it won't be, we'll get a better project if we can add funds into it.
Thank you.
All right. So what exactly do you want from us this evening?
Are you interested in doing this project? And if so, are you interested in applying those park improvement funds that we have tagged in the 5-year CIP plan now, so that as we're doing the design phase, we can look to use those funds? Obviously, we'll come back with the full design once it's designed out with construction costs, and those funds aren't allocated until fiscal year 23. So we'll have future years to make that final approval. But today we need to know that the city wants to be partners with GRG on this project, and that we'll ultimately own this park and add it into our park inventory for maintenance in the future.
All right. Maybe the simplest way to say, is there any objection to moving forward in partnership with GRG on this particular park?
I have no objection. I was just going to ask if we allocate the funds that are in the CIP now, what would be delayed or put aside? Is there anything that those funds are going to be accounted for currently?
No, because they're already accounted in this plan for this project,
Gotcha.
for this park right now.
All right. Anyone
And-
else? Go
And
ahead.
do we know those funds is put aside? Is that the total amount that we would need, or you'll bring back another budget dollar amount?
Again, we haven't done any of the design yet, but knowing what they have to spend, and if we're looking at this 150,000, that would be our cap. And so we would want to design below that amount so that we wouldn't come back and ask for more money. That would not be my goal.
So I'm hearing $150,000 cap.
Okay. So I think we do have two questions though. One is, are we willing to go forward? I don't see anyone objecting to that. Okay. Question number two then is, to your point, Emerson, are we willing to say through our capital improvement plan, we're willing to, at least right now, have that cap be $150,000 with the actual understanding that our director will come back to us during the process and let us know what we're talking about in specific dollars?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm okay with that.
Yes.
All right.
Because it's already in our
It is.
budget.
Yeah.
And this is not the first time we've talked about this.
Right. In fact, we borrowed some of this money to pay for something else. So, all right. Is that clear enough for you?
That's clear enough. And I will say the last project we did when we added money in, we actually got money back from the project because we came in under budget on the construction phase. And so we got money back, about $56,000 back. So hopefully we can do that again.
Okay,
but I'm not guaranteeing that.
I did call you a budget wizard on your way up here, so, or magician, I think. All right, we do have a few boards and commissions to
Thank you.
assign, and I know that Coach Leah and her fans are waiting patiently. We'll get there as soon as we possibly can. Green Space Advisory Commission, Liz James interviewed interviewed. We have one vacancy. Move ahead with Liz. Yep. All right. So that one's done. For Business Development Commission, Eric Bowring and Stephanie Skis, both interviewed. We have 2 vacancies.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, we can move forward with those. Reappointments to the Green Space Advisory Commission. Carrie Coyne has served 1 term. She's the current chair and would like to be considered for reappointment. We good with that?
Yes.
And Jerry Pickner, who has served 2 years, completing a term for a member who resigned early, wishes to be considered for reappointment.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, both very active members. All right. The last one is the Architectural Review Board. Angela Thompson, who has served 2 terms, is seeking reappointment through our process. And then David Yates is a new applicant. We only have 1 opening on ARB. Is that correct, Katie?
Correct.
Yeah. So
It would be
Can I-
Angela's position.
yes, it would be Angela's position. Yes, go ahead.
Well, I was gonna say, is it space for an alternate?
So we have alternates already, but do we have a prescribed number of alternates? They get used quite a bit. So I was just curious if we can add an additional alternate.
I mean, if you want to add an additional alternate, you need to change the code.
Okay, so it's.
Yeah, and I think probably that means consultation with staff about, how that works in terms of assigning things and through the schedule too.
So probably not something we want to.
I don't know that we can do it on the fly right this second.
Right.
It's just a lot of experience, a lot of dedication going out the door. I'd like to see, Angela on this is real, works well, but I'd like to see another spot somehow to get that member on.
So this is not really in reference necessarily to this situation specifically, but we have a couple of times now had discussions when we have good applicants that we'd rather just add somebody than choose, and that's not a sustainable long-term strategy. I'm not saying that we can't do that in this particular case if it's warranted, but it's coming up repeatedly, and frankly, it's
It's
a
good.
really good problem.
Yeah,
to
it's a good
have,
problem
because
to
we have wonderful people want to be involved. So, I mean, I'm going to say for the moment, we need to make an appointment, and we can maybe have discussions with the you're the liaison, and maybe with the director of planning about whether that's a needed addition.
Yeah, I mean, I would like to see, someone who's been applying for commissions and fits well into this one, get appointed to this one personally.
I think you have a name that you want to.
David Yates.
Okay.
And it's nothing at all against a very qualified and extremely helpful member of that current commission. So,
Anyone else have comments? Anyone have concerns with appointing David? All right, we'll appoint David and Katie, let's make sure that Angela understands how much we appreciate that, and then
Yes.
make sure she's going to stay with us on HPC because we don't want to lose that expertise. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
All right. Madam Clerk, did I get all the boards and commission assignments finished? All right, so we're gonna take 3 minutes. How about 3 minutes, council? Can we do that? 3 minutes, and then we'll come back, and first on the list is the world-renowned swim coach.
See, I gotta.
Didn't do that with very much force, so I don't know if I really have everyone's attention at this point. Welcome to our now regular meeting for October 18th. We are happy to have you all with us. We welcome questions, ideas, and comments from persons in attendance. You may only comment when recognized by the mayor or whoever else happens to sit in this chair. And we will ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes so that we can get through our agenda. Comments, we have no public hearings today, so anybody who wants to make a public comment, you need to do so during the public comment period, which is going to become very early in the agenda. There are cards on the table. Please fill out a card. And I think that's it. I guess if you're on Zoom, you're going to use the raise your hand function in order to make a public comment. But we are first going to have the roll call.
Yes, Mayor. Mayor Arnold,
Here.
Councilmember Bliss,
Here.
Councilmember Franklin,
Here.
Councilmember Smith,
Here.
Councilmember Alexander,
Here.
Councilmember Richardson, Councilmember Hickson Shepherd, absent for the moment.
All right, I am going to now have the great pleasure of a proclamation honoring Leah Burnson, who is a longtime employee of, she's very young, but a longtime employee of Webster Groves. Swim coach to my own children. I'm going to come down. Leah, if you'll come forward, I will read this wonderful proclamation. Anybody else who wants to come can. You know, there'll be pictures of it. Because Mickey's here. I'm just gonna step over here so that I can microphone for you all you want. And then I can come over there if you, and we'll hold it up there. All right. Whereas Leah Burnson is retiring after having served this community in the Parks and Recreation Department for 24 years, exhibiting excellent customer service, including knowing nearly every person's name who walked in the Rex complex, and serving as head coach of the Webster Waves swim and dive team for 17 years, including 15 undefeated seasons, coaching hundreds, if not thousands of area youth, including the mayor's kids. And whereas Leah has brought in to help maintain order with particularly energetic and rambunctious junior high group, and continue to work after school and early dismissal days, showing them tough love, and even had some of the more challenging preteens and teens come back when they grew up to thank her for her life lessons. And her leadership and ownership resulted in her being elevated to rec leader in short order. And whereas Leah taught water aerobics for all 24 years and made lifelong friends in the process, providing homemade treats at the end of each session, and was instrumental in the success of other aquatic programming, such as group and private swim lessons, parent-child exercise class, and assisting with pool special events. And whereas Leah was awarded the 2016 Chamber of Commerce Heart of the Community Award. Sorry, I read that wrong. Chamber of Commerce Heart of the Community Unsung Hero Award for her huge heart and passion for people, including anonymously sponsoring swim team members or Miss Webster pageant candidates experiencing financial hardship, and donating her time to teach swim lessons to at-risk teens and underprivileged youth. Now, therefore, I, Laura Arnold, Mayor of the City of Webster Groves, on behalf of the entire City Council, do hereby proclaim Friday, October 21st, 2022 as Leah Burnson Day in the City of Webster Groves. It's really nice, by the way, to see a bunch of lovely faces that I haven't seen in a while. And when you're finished, we're gonna let Leah have her moments and speak. You never speak. Okay, well, first, Mayor, thank you very much for the lovely words and the proclamation. Very lovely. Thank you so much. I'd like to thank my bosses, Scott Davis and Mickey McKee-Couch, for giving me all those wonderful opportunities to do things that I love. I'd like to thank my friends that I've met in all the programs, swim lessons, swim team, my water aerobic ladies that have been for years. Families and my coaches that still come back and say and be there for me. Thank you so very much. Could I have done this by myself? No. I have a wonderful support group. I have a lovely daughter. I have an awesome daughter that is now in heaven just recently. And I know that she would be so proud to see me up here. So, pardon my tears. You all know that I talk a lot, but I cry with it. Thank you all so very much for 24 wonderful years of my life. Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you, everyone.
I know.
And she and her daughter staff. Were, they always there, which is. And.
All right. All right. We now have remarks from community and visitors, and our first, I just will remind council and our, not visitors, we changed that. It's remarks from the community and visitors, and just would remind everybody that this is a time, 3 minutes for you to make comments. Generally, we as council members don't comment while you have your shot. So David Morrissey is our first resident. If you would please state your name and your address when you come forward. Thank you.
So my name is David Morrissey.
David, would you, there we go. Thank you.
My name is David Morrissey. I am not a resident.
Oh, okay.
Significant other. So, but I grew up in 86. I love that. This is home to me. There's no place like it in my opinion. So as a concerned former resident of Webster, there's obviously been a big uptick in car thefts, car break-ins, and specifically where Wendy lives over in Lenham Lane in that general area. It's literally almost daily that they have a group neighborhood chat and warning each other about somebody running into their car or car was stolen. I mean, it is out of control. So finally, I became frustrated and came up and happened to have somebody at City Hall. I needed to talk to one of the police officers as well and pick their brain and ask about what's being done, what patrols look like, what type of police over and above actions are being taken. So as a concerned citizen of the county, let alone as somebody I care for living in Webster, and tons of friends that are still here too. So I'm speaking on behalf of Webster residents, and I'm not sure who to direct this to, but I'm very curious what is being done to thwart this issue.
Thank you very much. As I said, it's not an exchange during public comments, but because I had your card, I did speak just briefly with the police chief who said he's going to take your number from the card and give you a call or have one of his captains do that. So you should hear from them in the next few days.
Okay. So I'd like to voice a couple of things that I found out from the officers. That apparently, and there was an address to a citizen from, I think, Chief Curtis, explaining a couple of the things that are issues. So a concerned citizen had reached out and said, tell me what's going on here. So a couple of things were brought up were there had been an attempt to put some sort of surveillance equipment in, but seemingly not very successful. Another attempt to increase the number of officers, seemingly a lot of the break-ins are happening between 11 o'clock and 6 in the morning. So seemingly trying to increase the number of officers on those patrols is what the chief had told the citizen. And talking to the officer today, he said there's 6 officers during the day, or 6 patrol cars in the day, and 6 patrol cars at night. And that there isn't a difference between what's being done in the evenings or in the day, according to some. I do understand there's not an opportunity to pursue folks that have not committed a violence. This is going to lead to violence. Someone's going to get killed.
I'm sorry, what street did you say that was?
On Lenham.
Lenham?
Yes. Lenham Lane is over at High School, Dobbin, and that whole area right up. Real close where I grew up on Reeds.
Time.
It's time.
Yeah, that's your 3 minutes. Yeah.
So I just want to voice, there's a lot of concerned citizens out there. They're not hearing about it. It's going on. Something has to be done. Webster is a very special place. I mean, people move here and live here because of that, but they have to feel safe. So whatever can be done would be much appreciated. But
Thank you very much. And do please be assured that we are hearing about this. This is not our first. And you should hear from someone from the police department.
okay, thank you so much.
Our next comment is from Dave, our next speaker's card is from Dave Buck.
Dave Buck, 124 South Elm. First of all, I don't know what brought you guys. I hope you got my email. But I would like to share tonight 2 quick perspectives on your meeting. First, you voiced the need to think outside the current Webster box. That's being creative and progressive. That's terrific. But there is also a need to think inside the box. That's being stable and traditional. And in my opinion, there's plenty of need and opportunity in our city to do both. But since its incorporation 126 years ago, Webster's historic equities have defined our box and our unique, well-established character and identity versus other communities. And whenever these equities are violated or threatened, our residents immediately push back, as they did on Douglas Hill, which was judged to be way out of character of Webster Groves. And council unanimously agreed and voted it down. Thus, to me, there is a vital need for council to strategically define on paper, once and for all, our city's character, identity, and our enduring equities to be preserved and protected, so there's no question or confusion in the future. Second, you identified leadership as a core value. As you know, there are different kinds of leadership. For example, Fire Chief Brett Ellis has a doctorate degree in transformational leadership. To me, though, city council and staff must strive for servant leadership. On the city org chart, council reports to and serves the residents. You report to me. You can further strengthen this purpose by continually monitoring and understanding our needs, then crafting a strategic plan that leads our community forward by successfully meeting and serving those needs. It's a cycle. It's pretty simple. Thus, as an advocate of market research in my career, it is critically important for you to constantly keep your finger on the pulse of your residents, and ideally to gain their input before you begin strategic planning. That's my opinion. For example, as a 20-year resident sitting in that meeting last Saturday, I worked through your same exercises. I came out with very different responses, very different answers than you guys did. And that's the point. You need to be in touch with residents like me so you can then factor that into your own thinking. And that's my 3 minutes, and that's it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Dave.
All right. Does anyone have new business for us this evening? All right, we will continue with unfinished business. Councilmember Alexander, will you call for the third reading of Bill number 9199, please?
Yes, Mayor, I would like to call for the third and final reading of Bill number 9199 and its subsequent adoption.
Second.
Bill 9199, third reading. An ordinance granting a conditional use permit for Telly 4 Properties LLC to permit the operation of an automobile repair and services facility on an approximately 0.8 acre lot at 7982-7984 Big Bend Boulevard in the C Commercial District and matters related thereto.
Are there questions, comments, discussion? I do want to note for the record, I did hear from a couple of residents of Colonial Village who want us to reconsider. Apparently, that's the only place in the Old Orchard Business District that we don't have 2-hour parking in front of that. And I guess people who worked at the former establishment workers park their cars all day there, taking up parking spaces. So I just want to put on the record that this is something that perhaps we can look into and see if that is related to the change of ownership, if it's worth considering 2-hour parking there, consistent with the rest of the business district.
The Traffic Advisory Commission will never stop.
All right, so I think we're ready for the vote then. Thank you.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold.
Yes. Councilmember Franklin, would you call for the third reading of bill number 9200, please?
Yes, Madam Mayor, I'd like to call for the third and final reading of bill number 9200 and subsequent adoption.
Second.
Bill 9200, third reading. An ordinance authorizing and directing the Missouri American Water Company, MAW, to remove one fire hydrant located at the rear of 2819 Breckenridge Industrial Court in the city of Webster Groves, Missouri.
Is there any discussion? All right, let's vote.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
All right, we are to bill number 9201. Councilmember Bliss, will you call for its third reading?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the third and final reading of bill number 9201 and its subsequent adoption.
Second.
Bill 9201, third reading. An ordinance repealing ordinance number 9190 to remove the subdivision approval for 3 lots at 820 Marshall Avenue and 828 Marshall Avenue and returning the property to 2 lots.
Is there discussion? All right, let's have that vote, please.
Yes, Mayor. Councilmember Smith,
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson.
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
We are on to new business and we will start with a flood map presentation from our Director of Planning, Mara Perry.
I feel like we haven't heard from you in a while, Mara.
I know.
She's been
We've
avoiding.
been hiding it.
So after the presentation by,
Acting up.
After the presentation by Karen McHugh with SEMA, I know there had been some questions. Different people have said, I wasn't in the floodplain, I was in the floodplain. We thought it might be helpful to show you the various FEMA maps and layer them on top of each other so that you'd be able to see some of the differentiation over time. And sorry, I'm trying to get, there we go. And so we went ahead and pulled together the maps that we had on file. The 1978 map, as you can see, has almost nothing, has a couple of streets. And basically there was a chart that went with it, and that chart would identify specific streets and addresses, but wasn't actually mapped on a particular map. Then in 1991 is when we first started seeing maps that had areas identified and hatched in a couple different manners to show the differentiation between the different zones. Then in 1995, you'll see it expanded pretty substantially, but it expanded primarily to the creek and to the other side of the creek. It didn't really change very much on the side where our homes were in Webster, which I'll go and have some additional maps from here. The next map in 2015 really started using the technology that we have by using the aerial photographs and overlaying it on the aerial photographs, which makes it a whole lot easier for someone to understand where they are in the on these maps. Many times we would get calls in the last 6-7 years where someone would ask or say that they had changed, that something had changed in 2015, that they hadn't been within a flood zone. And when we would go back, we'd have to zoom into that little map, and I'll go back for a second into this other map that really just has a couple key streets, and have to measure off of it to try to explain to them that technically they were always in a particular area. So we worked with some residents on that over the last few years.
So obviously the 2015 map, that was the most recent change that happened. I was here with the city at that time. We did have to send out some letters to people who were either removed or put in. The number that were put into the floodplain at that time was very, very minor. In most cases, either people were already in the floodplain and it expanded slightly on their property or reduced slightly on their property. Very few were completely put in that hadn't been before or removed from before. Minor changes here and there. So this was the 1978, and as you can see, I highlighted the various streets that were impacted during the most recent flooding. So you can see Brentwood Industrial Court, you can see Forest Avenue, Coleman Lane, Marshall Avenue, and Pacific Avenue. And they give the addresses of which properties were located in that FEMA map at that time. So for example, you can see on Pacific Avenue, it gives the addresses and then says that it's the even numbers of those particular addresses. So each of those are sort of identified in that way. I'm now, as I moved through, I did in Photoshop kind of expand each of the maps to layer them so that they would go immediately on top of one another. So this is where we are and all the information we had in 1978 for the key area that was impacted by flooding. This is now the 1991 map, which you can see the Zone X, the Zone AE. Those are sort of the key zones that we deal with on a regular basis for flooding. Then this is that expansion. So as you can see, there is an expansion, but it primarily expanded to the north side of the creek. And then this is the 2015. This last map, I went ahead and all four of the maps are on top of each other. Each of them has a transparency so that you can kind of see one on top of the other. And I can provide that in a different format. I added it into the PowerPoint, but you'd be able to, I can give you like a layered piece that you can sort of turn the pieces on and off or look at them on one another. We also added a chart. These are all the properties that have requested buyout. And we went ahead and showed what year it was put into the floodplain, what year the structure was built, and then wanted to leave that for you as some additional information.
This is really helpful, Maura. I really appreciate it because it helps me understand what the city's responsibility, or at least what the city versus the homeowners' knowledge was of potential flooding. So thank you very much for doing this.
Sure. And do know we have had one property in the last few years, they're not living in this area anymore, who did end up suing their realtor and the people and their mortgage company because they did not disclose that they were in a floodplain. So things like that do happen. And we worked with that resident in particular, got her the maps that she needed to show that it had always been in the floodplain. But hopefully this information helps.
You know, so the one question I've always had about this, and you know, this Karen might know this answer better than anyone, or you might know it too, Maura. So if you're in a floodplain and you buy a house, and you have a mortgage, are you obligated to get flood insurance? And
Yes.
most of the time you won't get the mortgage unless you show proof of the flood insurance.
Correct.
So if you had purchased this house since 1978, any of those substantially damaged houses since 1978, and you had a mortgage, you would have been obligated under that mortgage to secure flood insurance.
Correct.
Right, and the laws, the Flood Protection Act further requires that since, and I can't remember which year that was enacted, but you are also required to escrow your flood insurance. And that is reviewed when they do the escrow analysis every year. And if they determine that you do not have the flood insurance in place at that time, you have 45 days to put it in place or they will force place it.
Oh, wow. So is flood insurance, shows you how much I know about flood insurance. Is flood insurance a separate entity than your typical homeowner's insurance? Is it on top of?
Yes.
Okay.
It's different. It's separate.
And do know as the city, there are things that we do to put in place to try to keep the insurance as low as it can go. So we have, when we as we adopt the flood ordinances, we make sure we stay in compliance with those. There's also some ways where we can go even further. And we've researched it a little bit. We can actually make it even, and the hard part is it helps by lowering the flood insurance, but it makes it harder on residents. So there are ways where, like right now, we allow you, or we require you to build new improvements 1 foot above the flood elevation. There are ways that if you add it to be 2 feet above the flood elevation, it actually reduces the insurance for the whole community. But there's just things you have to debate about how you run those numbers. We've been basically adopting just the sample that we've been given that is the minimum requirements to keep us at that level, to try to keep the insurance at a good.
So one of the questions that's been asked by some of these homeowners is if we would give waivers for some of the new, I would imagine, flood related paradigms or flood related ordinances in order to reconstruct or to rebuild or to improve your property. And if we were to give those waivers, effectively what that would do is affect everyone's insurance throughout the region or throughout the area.
Or they call them variances.
Variances, all right.
I would go back to Karen McHugh's answer.
All right.
Yeah, I would just go back to her answer, because they would be the ones that would be monitoring us or auditing us.
Gotcha.
And her answer was yes. Her expectation was that.
Her
That
expectation,
it would
Yeah.
increase the insurance costs
Correct.
for the entire community.
it would impact.
So effectively what we have here is we can't give, it would be imprudent at this point to give a variance. And so the question that really comes down to is what's the obligation of the city in providing relief funds for flooding in a flood zone?
And I just think that what we have to take into consideration is what type of precedent are we setting? Because while there were 6 people, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 people that were significantly or substantially
Substantially damaged.
Yeah.
Correct.
There were, I believe, there were 28 other houses that were impacted. And of those, I think the last count I heard, Dr. Peoples, correct me if I'm wrong, I think at least 5 people raised their hands or something like that, that they would be interested in a buyout as well of the 28 that were not in the substantially.
So I believe everybody that's listed on the screen is all of the individuals, both substantially and unsubstantially damaged, that requested a buyout.
Okay. And so what concerns me is just the precedent that we're setting and how this then impacts the rest of the community, not just because we have people that are in a flood zone. These are people that were in this event, but we still have other homes and locations that are located in the flood zone that are not indicated here, right?
That is correct. I mean, our community has a flood zone that makes its way from Deer Creek. It loops its way up. It continues through, Lorraine Davis. It continues down. It goes all along Kirkham. I mean, we have a flood area in that entire, it winds its way through the community. Each event, the way that the codes are written are to try to keep properties from putting too much money into them so that they do have to be bailed out. So it's trying to keep that you can take care of life safety issues. You can continue to maintain the property. You just can't completely do a renovation that extends or causes that if it does have a flood, now it's a bigger impact on the community. So it does keep that level of maintenance at a base level. We've had quite a few properties in the last few years that have either torn down, or some of you've seen the one house that built out of the floodplain. We had another house where they tore down and they built in the back of the lot so they'd be out of the floodplain. We've had a few of those that have done that. We've also had a few where property owners have just torn down and left it as green space to add to their property so that the floodplain area remains grass. And then the property that they add it to has the house on it and it's out of the floodplain. So, I mean, I think the way FEMA establishes it is to try to get you to not put a lot of money into those properties, not huge amounts of money, so that if it does flood, it's not a major impact. And if there is an opportunity for it to not be there in the floodplain, that they encourage you to remove structures that are in the floodplain.
And then, and I know that this is a really, and I really empathize with the people that are impacted, but I mean, what FEMA does intentionally is, I mean, yes, the cost of flood insurance is absolutely separate from homeowners insurance, and it's priced specifically in line with the risk associated with the property. So when people find that their flood premium is extremely high and the coverage is minimal and really low, it is because that's designated with a high probability of flooding.
Of damage.
And so, I mean, it's just a very difficult situation. And like you said, the city has actually put in guardrails to try to help to minimize loss that might occur in those areas. But, you know, it's just really difficult in my mind for me to reconcile what precedent we would be setting with other clients that could be impacted as well. Other homeowners that might be impacted, and how would we help them all? How can we help them all?
And there's a lot of structures. I mean, you look at the age of those structures, they were there long before the floodplain came. 1940, 1960, 1950, you'll see there's quite a few homes there that were there for a few decades before it was put in place. And so it's a balancing act.
Yeah. Right. Because I mean, it's not like they built the houses knowing they were in a flood zone. At that time that they were built, they were not designated as that area. But then the question becomes, were they designated as that area when they were purchased? That's different.
Yeah,
Councilwoman
Emily
Alexander,
Hickson
we
Shep.
have that information for you. I apologize, Mayor. We have that information for you. When the purchases were made.
Emily, Councilmember Hickson Shepherd has her hand up, so why don't we give her a chance here? And I know Councilmember Bliss, you wanted to say something as well. So Emily?
Sure. Yeah, just a clarification that I was wondering on when we talk about these homes being in the floodplain or these properties, are the structures themselves completely in the floodplain or partially in the floodplain, or the floodplain is on the property, or is there a mix on this list?
I don't have that information right in front of me. I know that the substantially damaged ones are all completely in the floodplain. The ones that were not substantially damaged, I think some of them are kind of a half and half. For example, 808 East Pacific, I know that one in particular because it's right on the edge. So it actually goes right down through the middle of their property. So the structure is half in, half out, if I remember correctly. But I'd have to look at each individual property specifically.
Okay, thanks.
It was built in 2000. Go ahead. First of all, I did not quite catch that exchange that you had. I didn't hear what you were referring to, and then I do have questions.
She has information that indicates when the property was purchased, when it was most recently purchased, as opposed to when it was built. This shows when it was built, and most of those were built before the flood designation maps were being.
Okay, thank you. So as I'm looking at this, I'm looking at the ones that are not substantially damaged. I'm assuming you or Travis have that actual percentage for those?
We do. We have all that
And
information.
are these kind of, do you happen to know a range? Because it looks like they are ranked from maybe lowest to highest. Do you happen to know?
No,
like
there's
what the least damaged was?
There is, I
percentage-wise?
don't believe that they were ranked in any way. These were just how they happened to be in the spreadsheet that Travis had put together.
Okay, so that would be some information I'd like to know is just.
Yeah, percentage of
Least to highest below the 50%. And then the next question is, do each of these homes are they all in the 100-year floodplain? What is the percent chance that this that these homes would be flooded? Are they all the same?
So if you look on the map, the edge of it is what we call floodway fringe, which is sort of that. So there's a slightly lighter color on the, so if you're looking at the map.
I'm looking
and,
at the blue map.
Yes, looking at the blue map.
2015?
And there's the edges are a slightly different color than the centerpiece.
Yes.
So that's usually what's called the floodway fringe. So there's the layer, and that's usually that edge piece that you don't see as often as it comes out. So there's the hatched area, and then there's some additional dotted areas. So what I'd have to do is I'd have to show you where that piece was, but in most cases, most of them are within the flood plain, which is the 100-year.
Okay, nothing higher than 100-year, no 500-year.
Don't believe we
Okay.
have.
And as I understand it, 100-year floodplain means they have a 1% chance.
1% chance. Correct.
In the 100-year period.
Yes.
Okay, but some of these have flooded more than that, correct?
It's a 1% chance of that type. It's not that you're going to have it once and you're
Got it.
guaranteed to not have it in the 100 years.
Yes.
It's that percentage chance that it's going to happen. So yeah, there's a difficulty with how that works, but
Okay.
you can have multiple of them because
Yes.
of the type of event that happens.
Okay.
So can I follow up on that before you ask your next question? Is that all right?
Sure.
So because one thing that's not on here is, part of this is repetitive loss. That's one category of FEMA. We don't know, do we as a city have data about who's a repetitive loss?
Travis was able to get that information
Okay.
from the last major storm event. And he was able to get articles and things to back up that information from the Webster Kirkwood Times.
Okay.
And used some of that information for what he needed to apply for the buyouts.
Okay.
And would repetitive loss mean claimed losses? Like, or it's not counting like things where they had damage and maybe they didn't tell their insurance company?
So I know Travis had said that we checked with SEMA and we could not get the data for what specific claims, if I remember correctly, were filed. But what we were able to do is identify in that storm event how much rain, photographs, and other documentation from the news media of what had happened at that time, which helps determine some of the levels. So he would have more information on that. I apologize. I didn't ask him to come this evening.
That's okay.
But yeah, he would have more information on that. He had to document all of that when he filed the request for the buyouts.
But as I recall from our conversation with SEMA, if it's not filed, it's not considered a repetitive loss. You have to actually make the claim for them because you have that time window in which you have to.
They did say, though, that if you had information regarding a previous event in the community, that some of that information helped with
Gotcha.
a potential buyout.
All right, great.
Okay.
Thank you. Do you have another question? Since I interrupted.
No, you enhanced my, thank you very much.
Teamwork.
Yeah.
Yes.
I have, anybody else I have one question, but anybody else have anything before that? So if we look at 808 East Pacific, so that I think is the one on the list that was actually built after it went in the floodplain. And you talked about elevating things. What kind of things are required of the build there if you're making the choice to build in the floodplain?
So what's interesting is we had found, and this happened again when I was doing some research for this one property, that they weren't told that they were in the floodplain. We found that there were a couple houses that were built around 2000. That was when there was not a on-staff planning director. I believe it was that there was a consultant that was hired, or right around the time that it changed. The previous director, Roger Groh, came in at a certain key time. It looked like they didn't necessarily, in a couple of those instances, follow. I can't find documentation on their floodplain analysis.
Gotcha.
I can't, but it's long enough ago that we're not required to have kept all those building permits. So it's kind of an odd one where I can't see. So typically what they should have done is there should have been no basement. So any of those houses that were built in that time frame, and I think we found one on Kirkham. There's one or two on Pacific that were built around the time frame of 2000. And the permits would have gone through St. Louis County at the time, or right around that time. 1999 is when we switched over from building permits with county to building permits with the city.
Gotcha.
So if it was built in 2000, it would have been a 99 permit that probably would have gone through county, and county doesn't keep their records for that at all from that time frame. By state statute, you're only required to keep them for 5 years. And we do keep ours a whole lot longer. We have a lot of documentation scanned in. But typically you would have to build no basements, all elements, air conditioning units, hot water heaters, all of those elements have to be at that 1 foot elevation, or they have to have some sort of a structure around it to keep it protected from flooding. There's a house on Forest that had a fire a few years back. And when they went to rebuild, they built completely up, and their basement area can't be used as a basement. It's just a big foundation that is sort of empty, that lifted the house up and kept all of their equipment out of the floodplain.
Okay, thank you. Anybody else have questions? Emily, are you all set?
I'm good, thanks.
Okay. All right. Thank you very much. As David said, I think this is very helpful.
And we can provide, if you want to see it better, to be able to zoom in, we can provide that so that you can see the maps better.
I have a feeling this group probably wants to see that. So
Yeah, with the homes labeled, or
Yeah, we can try and see how much we can do of
right.
that, or where they are. It's okay. We can probably, there's probably one more layer I can add to it. I can add the city GIS map. I can just export that out and bring it into Photoshop and add that as another layer. Yeah.
you say that as if it was easy for some of us to understand what you're doing, but thank you for that. I appreciate it.
It's a fun program.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
Mara.
All right. Thank you again. So Councilmember Smith, we are to bill number 9202, and we need a call for first and second reading, please.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of Bill number 9202.
Second.
Bill 9202, first reading. An ordinance amending Chapter 60, Article 7, Section 60.975, Schedule H of the Code of Webster Groves, parking prohibited, to restrict parking on Lockwood Court.
Questions or comments? May we have the second reading, please?
Bill 9202, second reading. An ordinance amending Chapter 60, Article 7, Section 60975, Schedule H of the Code of Webster Groves, parking prohibited, to restrict parking on Lockwood Court.
Thank you. Councilmember Richardson, could you call for the first and second reading of bill number 9203, please?
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for the first and second reading of bill number 9203.
second,
Bill 9203, first reading. An ordinance authorizing the city of Webster Groves to enter into an intergovernmental cooperation agreement for the investment of public funds through the Missouri Securities Investment Program.
What have we been doing since, like prior?
Thank you, council member, for the question. Our investments are currently generally held through commercial entities. So our bank, our depository, and other banks investing in commercial paper, all legally authorized investments we make. This is another option that we look to add. And MOSIP, the real benefit we have with MOSIP is they maintain a very nice liquidity program that allows us to keep the cash liquid in case there is any need without binding it up. But we're seeing a better return there than the commercial markets throwing back on commercial paper.
Excellent. The percentage rates are significantly higher.
In this program here?
Yes, ma'am.
Nice. Which means the risk is higher.
Well, we can't take risk. I mean, there can be very limited risk if you buy treasury bonds, that sort of thing. You might buy them at one level, and if you sold them before they matured at a different rate, you might risk a very slight loss. But because these are public funds, we can't do that. So we have to adopt an investment policy similar, but that's actually developed by the Missouri State Treasurer's Office to make sure that we're compliant with all that sort of thing. As long as we're compliant, you absolutely minimize the risk. But you couldn't,
Want to be reviewed and such, so there is no risk for these investments in the way it works.
but if you put money in a bank, all the money has to be collateralized. If you use a program like MOSIP, which was developed for school districts around the state of Missouri, and it's statutorily protected, it's been adopted to make sure it mirrors the treasurer's investment policies and that sort of thing. If you use MOSIP, everybody in that plan is a governmental entity. Either it's a municipality or it is a school district. And recently, a number of fire protection districts that I represent have recognized the value of this. And so people are moving over their money because it's substantially different in terms of the interest rates.
Okay, because that was going to be my next question. So we were just not invested in this particular fund previously because we just were not aware of it or its return.
Yes, and initially it was really set up for school districts, but it's been expanded, and there have been a number of legal opinions that have been rendered by Gilmore and Bell, who we used before, Mark Grimm, if you recall. And they're the preeminent firm when it comes to investment and investment policies in Missouri. But they've read the statutes and they said, no, we think that this is something that's consistent with municipal government as well. So it's only been in the last couple of years that this has really sort of come upon the horizon.
Just quickly, so past with interest rate being so low, really wasn't that market competitive. So that was generally
Right.
around the same rate as interest rates have moved up with the changing nature of the economy. This has just boomed up to really attract. tool for us to have.
And the banks will catch up, but they're probably 6 months behind. And that's a lot of interest for the money that we have. So.
All right, any further discussion? Let's have the second reading then, please.
Bill 9203, second reading, an ordinance authorizing the city of Webster Groves to enter into an intergovernmental cooperation agreement for the investment of public funds through the Missouri Securities Investment Program.
All right, thank you. Does anyone wish to remove anything from the consent agenda? I do have a couple of questions. I don't want to take anything out. One has to do with the mill and overlay increased costs. And that one of the things mentioned there was for curb replacement. And I know we had some problems with the curbs. My understanding was those problematic curbs were going to be replaced at the cost of the vendor, not at our cost. I just want to make sure these aren't the same ones.
Yeah, so the curb replacement issue with cost increase is not the problems of poor quality work that happened in the vendor, it was cost increases.
Okay.
that happened simply.
Okay, good. So they did cover the cost of the replacement of those. Okay, great. Thank you. And then the second one, we're paying just, it's not a lot of money, but I'm curious about paying more, where to go? For the composting grant, when did we get that grant? And
Mayor, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. We're going to bring Mr. Ray on. He's on Zoom. And so we're going to have him answer your questions regarding the composting grant. And he may want to add something to the mill and overlay question as well.
Yeah,
Just
I
for
can.
the fun of it.
Can you hear me?
We can, thank you.
yes, thank you.
Okay, so yeah, on the mill and overlay, yeah, it was quantity overruns on when we did our final inspections and checking quantities. So that was the cost overruns on the mill and overlay. On the composting grant, we got the grant back in March, and cost increases hit us from implementing the grant after we were awarded the grant in March.
Okay. So I guess our lesson is we got to spend that grant money as soon as we get it. Then in this environment, I guess, at least.
So the amendment is to remove this from the budget?
No, the amendment is to add a little bit of funding so that we can implement the grant. Is that correct, Director Ray?
Yes.
Okay.
Just to add, we don't have expenditure authority in the grant fund for it. So even the money we've received, we need you to approve us being able to bill them and get expenditure authority.
All right. Yeah, I'm okay now. Thank you. So no one else, I'm the only problematic person on the consent agenda. So how about Councilmember Alexander, could we have a motion to approve the consent agenda, please?
Yes, Mayor, I would like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda.
Second.
Councilmember Alexander,
Yes.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss,
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin,
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Thank you. We have made some appointments to boards and commissions. David Yates has been appointed to the Architectural Review Board, Liz James to the Green Space Advisory Commission, along with reappointments on that commission of Carrie Coyne and Jerry Pinkner. The Business Development Commission, we have appointed Eric Bowring and Stephanie Skis. Yep, I think that's all my papers. We do have need for a closed session. Mr. City Attorney, could you give us our criteria, please?
Madam Mayor, I've already done that.
Well, excellent. Way ahead of me. Councilmember Bliss.
Yes, Mayor, I'd like to call for an executive closed session. First for attorney-client privilege communications, Missouri statute 610.021, open friends, 1, close friends. And with personnel, Missouri statute 610.021, open friends, 3, close friends.
Second.
Councilmember Richardson,
Yes.
Councilmember Hickson Shepherd,
Yes.
Mayor Arnold,
Yes.
Councilmember Bliss.
Yes.
Councilmember Franklin.
Yes.
Councilmember Smith.
Yes.
Councilmember Alexander.
Yes.
Yep.
You're gonna say no this time.
Thank you all.